What I'm using here is a hot wire foam cutter that I got on Amazon, and I'm using that to cut away large chunks of styrofoam at a time. It's a lot easier than cutting off tiny pieces with a regular hot knife, which I do own and you will see later in this video. And there's that hot knife I had mentioned. I got it at Hobby Lobby and it comes with a bunch of different bits so that you can get different types of cuts. This one looks like an X-Acto knife and it happens to be my favorite. So the styrofoam that I'm using I actually made from a wreath, one of those styrofoam wreaths that you get at the craft store. The reason that I didn't show you how I cut it up is because these were spare parts from another set of horns that I had made for somebody else's costume for a convention. These styrofoam wreaths can be found at any craft store, just check the floral section. You can see here that after I carved out all of my pieces with the hot knife, I'm using a Dremel to really smooth things out. All of these cuts that I'm putting in here are really going to add a lot of detail. So I'm putting horizontal cuts on the underside and putting vertical cuts on the top side. It's just going to create a bunch of really nice texture. Now that I've put some paper down, it's time for me to start using my Mod Podge to coat and seal these styrofoam pieces. They really don't take well to paint unless you coat them and seal them. Do as I say, not as I do. Make sure that you are using your spray paint in a well-ventilated area, wearing a painter's mask and gloves.
Alright, so what I've done so far is I've used this flat red primer to coat my horns here, inside and out. I'm not too worried about this part down here because that's all going to get glued. Now, I'm going to paint in all the details, and instead of doing a time lapse, I figured that I would talk you through it and give you some tips and tricks. So I'm going to be using a ton of acrylic paint. As you can see here, it is all different types of acrylic paint. I think that corporations would refer to me as a brand slut. No loyalty whatsoever. Like, I got some paint from Germany, some that my grandma sent me, some my dad sent me, the cheapest stuff I could find. So really, as long as it's all acrylic, you shouldn't really have a problem. I want to make sure to do all of the sunken areas in black. You really want to make sure that all of your sunken areas are in black and all of your areas up top here get highlighted. So I'm just going to go ahead and start really trying to get into the cracks. Now, as you'll notice, I am not being very careful with where my paint goes, and that is just fine because once you get it in the crack, you can just wipe it off. Blood, sweat, tears, and spit. But in reality, you should probably have some water or something, because that gets really gross really quick. I should probably go fill up a water cup. Now I'll be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and start filling in some of these cracks, and immediately wipe it off. Oh, if you got some jagged edges, you will bring parts of your paper towel with you. You can see a fingerprint from where I refused to wait for it to dry before I touched it, because I have zero patience. Really start getting in these cracks, all the details that I carved into it with a hot knife really start to come through. yeah, it's really time that I get some water. Boop. Firstly, before I go back to the time-lapse format, I just want to show you how I like to highlight. So when it comes to highlighting, you really want to, oh, let's see, Venetian red. Yeah, that'll do it. Oh, maybe. That is some old paint. I don't even throw it away until it's completely unusable. So for highlighting, you want to be subtle. You don't want to be too obnoxious with it. Let's see if that's... Oh, that's pretty obnoxious. What I like to do is highlight around the edges. So I don't know if you can see what I'm doing too well. But I like to highlight just minimally and smudge. Highlight minimally and smudge. I can always add more of a highlight, but it's hard to take away. So wherever you have a big cut or a groove, highlight around that as well. I will go in with a lighter highlight on here, but for now, I'm just gonna do this one and I'm gonna slowly build up to a lighter highlight. This whole set of horns is looking a little red for me. I might end up making it all a little bit more brown, but for now I'm gonna stick with this color scheme and see how it plays out. So for highlighting as well, I like to just, you know, add random spots and then smudge with your finger or a paper towel. Speaking of paper towels, you might notice these fancy blue ones I'm using. These are actually shop rags. You can get these at, you know, any sort of auto parts store. I find they last a lot longer. They're a lot thicker. They tear a lot less easy, so I get less fibers in what I'm working with. So I like to buy a roll of these and keep these and just use it until you cannot use it anymore. Don't throw one away until it is useless. As I stick one right to it. Okay. So again, I just added a little bit more white and now I'll go back in and go along. These edges. You want to be very careful with white by itself as a highlight because this is red and white mixed together and it's already a little obnoxious. All right. Because I am not all that smart sometimes, forgot to mention that if you just go ahead and you get water and acrylic black and you mix those two together, oh, I forgot, I put on Netflix. Then you can go ahead and water your black down, and that'll make it a whole lot easier to rub off and really get in the cracks there. See how much better that got in the cracks? Of course, it made it a lot darker, but with how much I highlight, how much detail I like to add, I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that for the whole thing, because I'm allowed to change my mind. I am a grown-ass woman. Really rub that in, and then rub that off. There we go. See how much less time that took? God, why don't I think of these things sooner? So really rub it in. Yes, I'm going over all my fancy highlights I just did because I will redo them. And rub it off. I'm assuming a sponge would also work nicely for this and probably not tear as much, but the sponges are all the way upstairs and I'm on a roll. Once the project train starts going, it does not stop. See, there we go. Oop. Comparison on where we're at on these horns. Are hard. I hope this video taught you something on the art of making styrofoam horns. In my next video, I will show you how I like to fix them to my head. So check back in soon, click like or subscribe, and I will teach you how to finish these off.